The year, 1903. Gertrude Stein leaves America to join her brother Leo in Paris. She doesn't return for 30 years. Together, they start collecting paintings from artists few had heard of: Picasso and Matisse, Cézanne and Gauguin, Renoir and Delacroix. They didn't have much money, but the paintings didn't cost much either back then. They hung them in their apartment at 27 Rue de Fleuris. That address would become legendary, and their apartment would become known as the world's first museum of modern art. Then on Saturday nights, they opened their door to the greatest minds of the nascent 20th century, and this then became the most famous salon in Paris. The painters, again, Picasso and Matisse. The writers, Hemingway and Fitzgerald. The poets, the philosophers, the critics, the dealers, they all came to Gertrude's salon. They came for her vision, her fierce wit, her world, and her judgment. But Gertrude wasn't just a patron of the arts. She was an artist herself, a writer whose work was so radical, so experimental, that even today it sounds like nothing else. Listen to this.
Repeating then is in everyone their being and their feeling and their way of realizing everything, and everyone comes out of them in repeating. More and more then everyone comes to be clear to someone. Slowly, everyone in continuous repeating, to their minutest variation, comes to be clearer to someone.
That was Gertrude Stein, in her own voice. And this is Pat Bond, a woman who brought Gertrude to life on stage for PBS back in 1979.
When I first met Picasso, I saw this small, dark Spanish man with huge eyes that seemed to soak up everything about you. He had eyes much like the lens of a camera. They would open and focus and close and open and focus. And when he saw me, he said, the Mademoiselle Stein, and his eyes opened very wide indeed. And he asked me to pose for him, and I said, certainly. I was very flattered. So I went up every day to pose, and as I posed, his mistress, Fernande Olivier, would read to me from the fables of La Fontaine. And Picasso and I would talk about the work.
My name is Nicholas Stein, and Gertrude is family. My grandfather was her favorite cousin, and later in her life, her financial advisor. My grandmother had a robust correspondence with Gertrude for over 30 years. And my father was a young boy when he met her in 1927, and he talked to us about her for the rest of his life. So, this is not your normal lecture about Gertrude Stein. For me, this is a family story set in Pittsburgh, in Baltimore, in Oakland, and of course in Paris, the epicenter of modernism, where Gertrude was at its center. Today, almost everyone thinks they know something about Gertrude Stein. They know that a rose is a rose is a rose, and that there's no there. Maybe they've heard that Gertrude discovered Picasso, or that she lived openly with her lover, Alice B. Toklas. Maybe they remember she returned to America in 1934, a literary sensation, drawing crowds from across the country. In my talk, Gertrude Stein and the Birth of Modernism, there's so much more to explore. The fierce rivalry between Picasso and Matisse, the terrible break between Gertrude and Leo, in part because of her newfound devotion to both Cubism and Alice. But questions remain. How did a medical school dropout become the center of the most important artistic movement of the 20th century? And how did Gertrude survive Nazi-occupied France as a 70-year-old who was Jewish, lesbian, and a famous American writer? And why does Gertrude Stein still matter to us today? This is the one talk that brings it all together: the genius, the salon, the art, the love story, the war, the legacy, and my family. Gertrude Stein and the Birth of Modernism, A Family Connection. Available from museums, universities, and cultural institutions.